But when we tolerate a lot of stress in our lives, like running big businesses or, stressful situations, that fat also accumulates around your heart. Poor sleep, a lot of drinking, all those will cause that fat around the heart. So I raised that issue because you asked the question, what am I seeing? And that's a biggie. People just are taking topicals for hair. They're doing transplants, doing stem cell injections. What about living better?
Why and what are we suffering from?
Yeah, well, I would sum it up this way. It's the accumulation of undetected disease that people don't realize that they have going on, and they're falsely attributing to just old age. They just think, maybe they're in their 20s and they see themselves falling apart or some things not going right, kind of early. And they just think that that's just part of living. But living is meant to be disease free. And it's just a matter of not understanding that you shouldn't be tolerating disease and falling apart. And the reality, in my opinion, Robert, is that people should be getting better as they're getting older. They should look better. They should perform better. We're starting to see glimmers of this in professional athletes with the likes of Tom Brady and others, and Rolando in the soccer world, who are pushing the limits of high performance. And by the way, don't they look great? I mean, they really are truly healthy, and they should be models for everybody to be inspired by. But everybody carves it out and just says, "Oh, that's because they're professional athletes." No, it's because they are intentional about how they live, what they eat, what they do. That makes all the difference in the world. So that's my opinion. People just accept, this disease as part and parcel to aging, and that's why I like to call it, it's not aging, it's diseasing.
I am 69 years young as of yesterday. March 12th, 56, I was born. And as a physician, I thought I learned the answers, yet I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And in my early 50s, 55, I went carnivore. Before that, it was keto paleo. Maybe you can help explain some of the things that you and I have been taught that might be wrong and what we're learning and sharing today that might be right.
Yeah. So, when I went to medical school, I thought I was going to be going to study science. And for sure, we study science. But what it turns out, kind of underneath all that, I think, is big business. And so the more I practiced conventional medicine, the more I came to see that so much of it was just treating disease instead of actually getting people really healthy. And there was so much business associated with metrics. They were attached to how I performed as more a revenue maker than how I performed at really eliminating disease in the lives of these people. So I think that's a big problem. The conventional approach to healthcare is focusing in on treatment models to which performance is rewarded in the form of revenue, based on Band-Aids, a box of Band-Aids, treating things. We got our fingers in the dikes. And let's face it, the more people, continue to come to us and be a part of the system, the more they were falling apart. And, the older patients who come in the ER with just bags of medications, just enormous bags of medications, just have more and more chronic disease. And the sad reality is, I look back at that conventional approach is, my God, the only way to describe the experience that the consumer in healthcare has is abysmal, that they just keep falling apart. So, you're a business guy. I think if somebody like a visionary like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk targets the largest pot of money, which is healthcare, it's bigger than retail, it's bigger than energy. Healthcare is incredibly ripe for disruption. What that means is there is the very real opportunity for somebody that is a transformational minded leader to come in, or it might be several people who are going to change how business is done and turn it from a model where compensation is attached to treatment and exploitation of disease to compensation is attached to prevention and reversal of disease. And until that happens, I don't think we're going to see a lot of change. But I will say, politically, this is the most optimistic I have been in my lifetime. I think our country is poised for a disruption when it comes to healthcare. I think whatever you might believe about Secretary Kennedy, I think the majority of people think that he's a disruptor. He's not somebody who's going to conform to things. And so you have the potential of big change. And I want myself, and I want our fellow colleague carnivores ready to help to be a part of that, to help usher in a new existence for humanity where we're getting better. So, I was probably like most MDs practicing in that kind of a box situation, taking patients as they came to me. And, we were changing lives and saving lives. You were bringing lives into the world, catching babies and taking care of half the species, females, in a lot of other respects besides delivery. And, slowly I got this insight into my own disease situation. Really started with, I was basically, I'll just be honest, a fat doctor. And a patient told me, like you, about the paleo diet. Okay, so that was my first foray into being healthy. I had never heard of this term paleo. And I went on the paleo diet, and he told me to eat paleo, to eat fermented foods, to go out in the sunshine and sprint, and to do some fasting. So, I had a lot dropped on me besides just paleo. And he said, that will help you lose weight. Okay. So I had erectile dysfunction. I had enlarged prostate. I was waking up 5 times a night to pee. I was having my sleep disrupted if I'm waking up that much. When I would pee at the age of 48, it was a dribble. It sounded like, a very old man, very weak urine stream. I had eczema, I had Barrett's esophagus, precancerous lesions, all these medical problems, erectile dysfunction. And I go to lose weight, right? That's all I'm trying is to lose weight. Then within a year, not paying attention, I'm just, going into the ER. I realized at one point I am now voiding is the medical term for peeing, but I am peeing in my toilet and I'm making noise because I'm blasting so hard. And I go, wait a minute, that hasn't happened in a very long time. And so I realized as I thought back, I saw all my medical problems, my erectile dysfunction that I was treating with Viagra and Cialis. Without my wife's knowledge, I wanted to pretend I was this healthy stud, but I had fallen apart. I was a sinking ship, going down. And this diet relieved my medical conditions. So I purposed to start researching to try to find an answer because it wasn't in my medical training. It wasn't anything that I learned in medical school or in my 4 years of residency to train as an emergency medicine doctor. And so I went and started studying with an MD, PhD, epidemiologist, legitimate researcher, and who had stumbled across fat deep in the abdomen. And he started researching that visceral fat, invited me to join his practice. And we just looked at lifestyle and what you eat that really allows the fastest elimination of that inflammatory fat. And, that was back in 2013. And Robert, today I will tell you, as a dedicated physician, scientist, researcher, that the single most important strategy I give people for dietary nutritional intake to eliminate visceral fat is get them on meat. Get them principally eating a meat-centric carnivore diet. and a little bit of fermented foods for microbes. But if I can only get them eating meat, I'm going to have a success story. And one, getting them to eliminate obesity if they're overweight, and then beginning to peel back the layers of disease that is attended to a lifestyle in most cases where people are just eating tasty food instead of food that's healthy for them. And oh, am I glad. I eat meat every single day. I never get tired of it. I can hardly wait till the end of this podcast, and I'll be eating beautiful, grass-fed beef with my family, and super excited about it.
Nice.
Well, it really happened with that realization that disease fled my body, and that's how I describe it. It left quickly with the changes that I had made, and that I realized that my training was all centered on just fingers in the dike, boxes of Band-Aids, covering up things, treating things, but not really reversing or curing disease. And that comes from a life well lived. So I think it was predominantly what happened to me, and then becoming a researcher and seeing it happen to other people, and thousands of people that we studied and put them on this meat-centric diet, carnivore. And I transitioned from paleo to keto, just like yourself.
Yep.
Keto to carnivore. And, each time I cut back on my carbohydrates, I did better. I went to new levels. And, that last one, I don't know how it was for you, but it was a big one. I mean, I remember being told, about the carnivore diet when I was keto. And I thought, no way, you cannot just eat meat. And then what happened to me was my friend who's in social media and does health podcasts and really works with private clients. He went carnivore first and worked hard on me on the phone, and I hadn't seen him. And then he came back into my town, and after being away for a year, and I bumped into him at Whole Foods. He looked so completely different, completely better.
Wow.
That I was compelled by the anecdotal experience of what happened to him. I said, my God, Nick, what happened to you? And he says, it's carnivore, man. I'm telling you, I've been telling you, you got to try carnivore, do it. And based on his dramatic improvement, over the year, dude, I did it. I went in carnivore full bore. I left keto. I stopped eating vegetables unless they were fermented, and fermentation to reduce the lectins, the plant toxins, the plant defenses that I think are real, our colleague Anthony Chafee, I think, does such a great job about. And does it eliminate, when you ferment, does it eliminate all of them? No, not completely, but it's a trade-off. I go with a dramatically lower amount of plant toxins in that fermented food to be able to have a little bit of garnish of those ferments for, the microbial contribution, traditional practice. But that's what did it for me, man. It was an anecdotal experience. And it was anecdotal experience in 6,000 people that I saw studying visceral fat and changing their lifestyle, changing their diets. And that you ultimately allowed me to get this insight into how people can truly live better. And we have got to do a better job. We as influencers in the social media space, we physicians have to be able to articulate, in my humble opinion, this in a convincing and persuasive way to be able to save more lives and optimize more lives. Because Robert, you and I are living good, man. When we were out in Wyoming, we're happy every single day. Now that we've changed our lifestyles, and that's why we do what we do. Social media is going to be an effective conduit to get this kind of alternative information out that's life-saving and life-optimizing that just is not going to happen in our conventional, in our conventional community. So here we are, social media, kicking it.
So for thousands of years, our evolution was hunting and gathering. And I imagine we mostly focused on animal products, nose to tail. What was the transition, and why are we hearing from our supposed health experts, from the government, nutritionists, and even the medical community, to focus on the plants rather than the meat and the animals? I mean, there's some reports that red meat causes cancer. Is there any validity to this, or is this really science fiction instead of science fact?
Yeah, it's science fiction dressed up to look like it's science. But when you peel back and you take a look at those studies, you realize that they're really confounded, and they're basically compromised from how they are actually designed, which is intentional to create the outcome that they're hoping to achieve. And that outcome is a plant-based diet where we eliminate reliance and utilization of what is the most valuable contribution to the Homo sapiens, which is a meat-based diet. So it's all designed to promote plants. It keeps the system, it homogenizes everybody kind of equal level. We're all falling apart. We all got the same amount of disease. But if you look to the sides, what you see are these carnivores who are thriving. And that's where social media comes in. So I think it's predicated upon revenue. There's so much money in disease. The largest part of our economy is healthcare, and the largest portion of healthcare is not in obstetrical care, delivering babies. It's chronic disease. So Robert, you'd made even more money if you went into geriatrics.
Well, that's it. And it's so more and more men and women are suffering reproductive dysfunction. Sperm count's down, egg quantity is down. You said we're having problems with erectile dysfunction, prostatic function, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Are all of these related in their cause, or are they all uniquely different in their cause?
No, I think they're related. They're all expressions of chronic disease. And so the best way to describe chronic disease is a life lived incorrectly. That's what happens. It's a marker of an existence in a human being when they simply don't know. And I like to realistically describe it that way. People don't intentionally want to suffer. They don't intentionally seek out disease. They are more intentional about seeking out pleasure and comfort. But what they're missing out on is knowledge that can be imparted to them from social media influencers, effective influencers like yourself. You look great. You perform great. That picture of Anthony Chafee, you and I together at the Beef Roundup, is a wonderful photograph. And it just exudes, why don't you live like us? Do what we do. We're, health optimizing physicians, and we can help you if you just listen to us and give it a try. So I never get tired of preaching that message. The mission is so important. It's not only life-saving, but it really optimizes people's lives for a better quality of life. And that's why our communities, our followers are thriving, and we're doing well. So I think it's just a matter of time. We're slowly winning this, and we just need to keep at it.
Share the message. I notice you're not sitting at a desk and sitting, sort of in this conversation, but you're standing like I am. Is our problem we've sort of created a lifestyle as you get up, you go to work, you sit, but on your way to work, you're sitting because you're either in a car or on a bus or a train or something. What's happened to our activity levels in our lives?
Yeah, so that's a really good observation. We're losing our capacity to leverage and produce energy. And it really happens on a cellular level and even a subcellular level, specifically within mitochondria. And so your metabolism, your ability to produce energy and also utilize it, is compromised as disease besets the body. And so a reflection of a life well lived is the capacity for staying for long periods of time, walking for long periods of time, doing work for long periods of time without fatigue and tiring out. And it must be said that evidence of a life poorly lived with disease is just the opposite. Declining energy, inability to stand, the need to always sit and rest, becoming short of breath, just going up a few flights of stairs. I mean, I remember working when I was a VA physician, walking with my colleagues in the VA, and we would walk up a half a flight of stairs, right, Robert? It is like just 6 to 8 steps. They would be overtly dyspneic, okay? For the followers here, that means short of breath from just walking up six little tiny steps. And they're taking care of our veterans in a healthcare delivery model. So it's like the prisoners are running the asylum. That's how bad things have gotten.
The food that we are preparing for our sick patients or our parents and grandparents in memory care homes and aged homes and those in recovery. What is it we're feeding our patients, and why aren't we in medicine speaking out?
Yeah, well, we really should. I mean, I remember going to a nursing home in my hometown, volunteering my time to help the elderly residents that were staying there that had various levels of need and care, and talking to them about the need to cut out processed foods and especially carbohydrates, these processed carbohydrates, and the looks that I was getting. And one of the residents tell me, well, you know, this place literally serves us 5 times a day, hot, warm, homemade cookies, 5 times a day. And we're all waiting for them, lining up. This is horrific that this is happening. But, you know, when you have somebody that's like a demented patient, they're frustrated. They may not be able to talk, you know, articulate what's bothering them. But you give them a hot, gooey, sticky cookie, and suddenly they're easy to take care of. So the staff in these nursing homes, you know, are literally feeding these people just because it's like, you know, when we were interns, you know, you'd write for Ativan, write a PRN order for Ativan and Benadryl, you know, and then the H1 blocker, and we called it intern friendly. You know, we wrote intern friendly orders to make it friendly for us so we didn't get woken up at nighttime. So we are wrong in our profession, and then it's also happening in nursing care facilities, and it's really time that we start addressing, calling it out. And Robert, I am tired of our physician colleagues who are ignoring us. I mean, they look at us like we have 2 heads, or we're telling people to turn into communists or something crazy, right? But the reality is, hey, look at how we look. Look at Dr. Kiltz. Look at Dr. OMara. Look at Dr.
Awesome.
Casey. Look at Dr. Baker. Is this really something you should be critical of? And look at what's happening in the followers that are adopting this meat-centric approach. I mean, isn't it time that you stop and start paying attention to this and consider it instead of demonizing it only because you think that we should be eating plants and vegetables? But when we tolerate a lot of stress in our lives, like running big businesses or, you know, stressful situations, that fat also accumulates around your heart. Poor sleep, a lot of drinking, all those will cause that fat around the heart. So I raised that issue because you asked the question, what am I seeing? And that's a biggie. You know, people just are taking topicals for hair. They're doing transplants, doing stem cell injections. What about living better? You know, just helping people understand that. So you can just Google male pattern baldness, comma, heart fat, or epicardial adipose tissue is the medical term for it. And you'll see this connection. And I know you don't probably see a lot of baldness in your connection, but in your social media influence, you probably see a lot of people that have thinning hair, and help them understand that.
Well, I take care of the male and the female side of fertility because we're seeing tremendous amount of libido, sex dysfunction, hormonal dysfunction on both the male and the female side. We're seeing sperm. A significant proportion of men have abnormal sperm. Even the healthy men and the healthy women have abnormal sperm and eggs. I'm just wondering, though, is the cause the plants, which we've been eating since we were children, and our mothers ate the plants in utero, that may have had adverse effects on the sperm, the egg, the embryo, the infant, which may have consequences into our reproductive years?
I think so. I mean, I see when individuals, client patients come to me and they eliminate plants from their diet, that you see a reversal of this inflammatory fat around the heart, inflammatory fat in the abdomen, inflammatory fat in the muscle, and the concomitant improvement of chronic disease going either completely away or getting better. So I'm a complete believer. I am convinced based on my experience working with thousands of people doing this, eliminating plants and vegetables, and seeing from the inside out. Now, God bless our vegan physician colleagues, okay? No, I don't doubt their authenticity, but Robert, all they have to go on are cholesterol numbers. You and I go on our builds, our appearance, our reversal of disease, how much better we're living. I go on as a researcher, the fat around the heart leaving, the fat in the muscle leaving. So it's just another biomarker that I follow. They follow something different, laboratory values on cholesterol, but they're well intended. I was practically a vegan. I was eating only one serving of meat a week. And I thought, I mean, listen, there are many people persuaded by the seeming attractiveness of a plant-based diet until you realize that you're falling apart and you're not optimizing. And then you adopt the ultimate elimination diet, going carnivore, and you see this slow and steady improvement in your life. So what I see is what you're seeing. I know you're seeing this in people that you get off plants and off vegetables. You see them thriving and improving with a carnivore diet.
Would you say then in our domesticated environment? So this is in our prehistoric, essentially, right? Paleolithic, not Neolithic environment. Were you and I going out hunting for fruits and vegetables or sheep and cows?
I think we're going for meat. Meat, because what is happening to humans that do a meat-centric diet today in 2025 had to have been the case as well. The carnivore diet allows me to be strong, vital, and vigorous. At my age, I'm just about to turn 62. And why you look so good, we're walking around as what the younger population say are old dudes, but we're looking good. We're living well. We're attractive, persuasive models for health to people. And our ancestors would have detected that their lives were better and they performed better when they ate meat. And I think plants were only used back then for medicine and maybe in periods of starvation. If something happened to our animal meat supply, then maybe we would have, for short periods of time, in the absence of eating nothing, ate some kind of plants. But I am absolutely convinced that our ancestors ate a meat-centric diet. The other interesting thing is, I think we ate a lot of meat. And I think as evidence of it, I would point there's only one species of animals that we hunted to extinction that I'm aware of. I'm not an anthropologist, and that is megafauna. And I think the woolly mammoth was a very popular part of our diet. We hunted it like crazy, and it's no longer around today. I'm kind of interested in getting it back. I mean, we have the DNA, and I thought, well, maybe we need to start eating the woolly mammoth again. If we're doing so good with red meat, let's see, bison and sheep and lamb and beef. What would we be like returning to woolly mammoth?
I imagine that that the alpha team went out hunting, but we brought the others with us. But as we over hunted and we came across times of suffering, maybe the alphas realized that the masses could go ahead and cultivate the plants and we could feed them. And now we'll have enough of the meat for ourselves as the alphas. And we can now domesticate the masses, but we want to keep them from eating meat. Do you think that's part of the story of our present environment of the commercialization of food, industrialization of food and medicine and science and all these things, that basically we can continue the story to eat the plants while we will continue to eat the expensive meat, which makes us healthy and you weak and meek?
Well, I love that theory. And it would be really important, I think, if we could discover that. Before I went into medicine, I was a police officer, an undercover drug agent, a detective. Then I became a criminal prosecutor. And I would really like to find out if that's the case. But I also think it's possible that those that are behind the plant influence could simply be well intentioned, but poorly informed and think they're doing the right thing. But my golly, I'd go open up a can of whoop ass if I could find that these people are eating meat and driving everybody else to just eat plants and vegetables while secretly benefiting themselves from a meat-centric carnivore diet. That would just be, abysmal if that was really going on. So, hey, great question. Love to find out.
Well, so which is the most expensive meat, ground beef or ribeye?
Well, for sure, ribeye.
So, but who eats ribeye? It's those that have more access with money. And so ultimately, how do most people, what's it like? It's Hamburger Helper. What's in Hamburger Helper? Is it lamb, goat, or is it like rice and beans?
Yeah.
Right. And so ultimately, the rice and beans keep the meek weak and the masters the kings and queens of the world.
Completely agree. And that is, in fact, historically established that the land, the lords of the land in the Renaissance period would eat meat, and then they provided peasant food in the form of carbohydrates, carbs, grains, rice, legumes to feed the peasants to control them better, while they themselves ate more meat and reserve that for their own benefit. So historically, that's been present, and why that couldn't also be occurring today, I think, is very much a reasonable question, and we ought to be looking at it. But to evidence that, look how we're doing. Look at the carnivore community. We are sending quickly up to levels of existence that are being ignored and dismissed. But how long can the vegan community continue to try to ignore this? I think it's going to be challenged. We're already seeing a dip in plant-based, alternative meat-based meat alternative foods. Those are starting to collapse and not do well. But you still have this, push this narrative to eliminate meat, saturated fat, going to cause cancer, cause you to have heart attacks and strokes. I literally see people that go on the carnivore diet develop visible pulses, erectile dysfunction reverses, They get an erection that bounces back like they were a teenager again. They're doing tremendous improvements in their physicality, how they do push-ups and pull-ups. They're sprinting, doing all these vigorous things that they dismissed doing. I was with a client yesterday who came to see me a year ago, was eating mostly vegan and vegetarian, was scheduled for a hip replacement, 2 knee replacements, and a shoulder replacement.
Whoa.
I begged him to go carnivore and see what happens. And just yesterday, he goes, I couldn't sprint when you came to me and you tried to videotape. We videotape people sprinting to show how much better they get. He's 53 years old. He couldn't sprint even 3 feet. He tried, gave up. And yesterday he showed me a video of him sprinting like a badass, about 100 meters, and how every one of his surgeries were canceled, and now he's completely pain free.
Wow.
So this is what's waiting for you if you start living correctly and abandon how you previously were living with processed foods and plants. And to be sure, plants are hugely problematic, but the disease process and chronic disease we see is also being accelerated by these, very inflammatory processed foods that are sneaking into our diet in the guise of food. So, yes, for sure, there are many things we're doing wrong.
Is changing from a plant-centric to a meat-centric diet only for some people or all human beings?
I honestly believe it's for all human beings. But I will say this, that some people who have abandoned or maybe were raised predominantly only eating vegetables and plants, when they introduce meat, it can be a difficult transition sometimes. But that's where people like yourself and I come in the carnivore community to help them be able to integrate that because the benefits are so great and the difficulties they have eventually go away. And people that have been vegan for a very long time feel in very short order, they start to feel significantly better. And they're shocked at what happens when they just give meat a try. Listen, if you're a vegan and you're listening today, you're a vegetarian, you don't have to tell all your other vegan friends that you're giving meat a try. Just do it and see what happens.
Is there a transition time that's required? And do you think there's a psychological component that we're all living with that's anti-meat?
Yeah, I do think there can be a transition period that is in existence or even required based on how long somebody has been vegan, and it definitely abates over a period of time. And so I do think that there is really this noble, well-intended, I don't want to say noble, but well-intended kind of a belief system out there that's propagating this ideological belief that plants are really good for us to be eating as a substitute for meat. And people are genuine. People are sincere in their perpetuation of this ideology, but it's in opposition to what happens to people. And this is what I don't get. Why are physician vegan colleagues in denial about sarcopenia? I mean, the acceleration of muscle atrophy is astounding with people based on how long they've been vegan and continue to cut out meat and keep it out of their diet. You see this very concerning loss of muscle mass and muscle performance. And that's why carnivores look vigorous and vital and living better lives, because we are able to avail ourselves of the single most densely nutritionally beneficial substance ever identified, and that is meat for Homo sapiens. But I just don't get it, Robert. I don't know how our vegan colleagues are ignoring what's happening within their patient load that they've got convinced to eat vegan, and then they see these carnivores coming in. I don't know how you rationalize it.
It's religious, it's civilization and domestication, and ultimately the plants are the predators, and they make products to control and kill you. The plants are live organisms. They want to be alive. They have the sentient understanding of the universe. We think we're the smartest. I can't understand. Would Sean OMara and Rob Kiltz want to get on a rocket ship and go to Mars?
I wouldn't.
Would we really trust like someone that says, "Oh, you should get on there and go to"? It's going to be so important for the human race for you to do that. And ultimately, this is where the plant products, which are highly addicting, and they will control you. But I always say the priests, the pope, the presidents call on the masses to come and to the pyramids. Remember, the pyramids and the pharaohs fed the masses bread and beer. And if I feed you bread and beer, we're hanging out together. Oh my God, we're going to go there. It's an amusement park. But ultimately, you are the hunter. You are the master. And ultimately, we can't trust any science. I don't even believe we need a scientific study to tell anyone about carnivore, because all you need to do is look at my friend Sean OMara and say, what did you do in your 60s to look and feel amazing when I know you looked and felt shitty before?
Yeah.
And Kiltz at 69 is starting my 70th year. I'm starting my 15th year carnivore. And my job as a doctor is to help you not need me as a doctor.
Yep. Yeah, I call it the N of one. Do the study. Just the study is one person. It's the most important person in the world. It's you. And study what happens when you cut out plants, processed foods, and you adopt a carnivore diet, and see how much more beneficial. And does it really matter what's happened to the 7.999 billion people that are out there? You don't really care if it's saving your life, eliminating disease. That's what matters. But to the rest in the plant propaganda, they've twisted science. They flavored it. They bring in confounders. And the average man or woman simply lacks the ability to decipher and interpret the medical studies, and they believe them and they go along with it. Be the study yourself. Do a study on yourself. See what happens.
Well, I'm a scientist and I can't decipher the science.
Great,
so how do we expect anyone else?
Yeah.
So
we all disagree. Everybody's disagreeing on these science. I mean, and why is the community cherry picking while they follow their favorite person? Why I think this person is smarter. Don't follow smart people. Follow people that look good, perform well, and live well. That's who you follow, and try out what they're doing. You know why? Because it's been our existence for hundreds of thousands of years. That's how Homo sapiens have existed. We follow the leaders that are healthy and are better influencers. And today we kind of given it up to, whoever's got a better study or whatever. But that's not how we have evolved as a species. And if you keep following something that is tried, true, and tested, which is tradition, then you run into problems, and you can follow for some kind of a fad diet. The vegan diet is a fad diet. It really is not how we lived. We ate meat. We had to eat meat. We made megafauna disappear. It wasn't like we hated woolly mammoths. We loved eating them. That's why they're gone.
Are the organ meats, do you think, important for us to eat? And I always go back, what did we eat 50,000 years ago?
Yeah. So I do believe that organ meats are important and beneficial. They have a place. You got to eat them within, reason. I don't think, and I don't recommend anybody eating a lot of organ meat because you want to have things, you want a variety. So some liver, maybe some heart, maybe, some offal, some of the organs, but you don't want to be eating too much of it. And we know that if you eat particularly certain portions of an animal, you can get into trouble if you just exclusively eat. Like I remember somebody eating a polar bear gallbladder and getting themselves into trouble. So you do have to be cognizant of that. But I think for the most part, eating strategies, nose to tail, eating a lot of tendons, eating a lot of ligaments. These are important. I was talking to my user group, my community today about the importance of doing that, and glycine and collagen and how beneficial that is. And even the structure of our faces became healthier and had a healthier look and appearance to it because we would eat, nose to tail, and we would have a lot of those gelatinous, kind of experiences where you get to eat that fat and eat those other things.
What about all this protein? I mean, I'm always asked the question, what is protein?
Well, protein is a macronutrient that's essential for our health, but I prefer to get my protein in the healthiest form possible, which is meat, and not in a processed form that might be somehow, purified, marketed, and changed in structure and surface area that gets us into trouble. So I'm a naturalist, Rob. I like to live naturally, eat natural, meat, and also live the most natural lifestyle that I can.
I'm imagining you and I, 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, and saying, to get your macros today, your minerals and vitamins, and, we need more protein. I mean, ultimately, if you're not going to eat for the next month, is protein important or fat important?
I would say fat would be the most important thing.
And yet we probably weren't talking about that either. And so what you're saying is you either eat meat or you eat animals or eat plants. I mean, we're not hunting for a bunch of crabs, probably.
No, I would agree with that. And we would have learned ancestrally what the best sources of food and really meat were, and identified that and put it into practice. And we would have had inculcated in our species a tradition of eating that way. And just over a period of time, generationally, we've abandoned and lost those insights. And now, with the advent of the carnivore diet, we're seeing these amazing improvements in people's lives and their existence and the eradication of disease. So it's being newly rediscovered in our species, the importance and place of the carnivore existence.
When you say carnivore, and when we said paleo and keto and what animal based, and I'm confused. What are we talking about?
Yeah. So carnivore, I describe as a meat centered and predominantly just meat only. I would be willing to potentially maybe even go off all fermented foods if I could get a rich source of water and animals. Rob, the animals are a source of beneficial microbes based on how they lived. And this notion of, meat processed and sterilized and some kind of USDA center and everything, it's the traditional hunter that really has a better source of provender and food and meat than getting it all sterilized and wrapped. So microbes are something that are very different than how we're living today versus the hunter of traditional ancestors 50,000 years ago. So the meat is just critically important. It's always been a part of our diet. I find it sad and laughable that the vegans are trying to challenge and promote a theory that our ancestors did not eat meat. Meanwhile, while they're falling apart, I I don't get, why would we do something that would cause our species to fall apart? But at least with an isolated number of people today, that seems to be happening. But it wouldn't have been a tradition that we would continue with. So veganism is really more of a modern day phenomena, in my opinion, and not something that was long term part of our species existence.
Maybe you could touch a little bit about the propaganda, the profits, the money that drives and directs many of our professional organizations, and how the pharmaceutical industry, along with the medical industry, sort of usurped true science in our field.
Yeah. So I think that's really an important question, and one that people, I think, if they understood and looked into it, would be very surprised. And I will say, I hope that we do some serious inquiries, investigations. Maybe we have a commission that's set up to take a look at the influence between the food industry and investors' money, the financial institutions, and the pharmaceutical industry, and then even the healthcare system, how the pot of money is so big and it's enormous, it's unrivaled, it dwarfs oil, that it becomes unmanageable, and it's just too desirable not to manipulate it in a way that benefits the controlling establishment. And I think the controlling establishment is solidly in the plant-based vegan community more than it is in the ranching meat community. And so I think it should be investigated. As a former, detective and investigator and a former criminal prosecutor, my salivary glands start watering at the notion of identifying criminality behind this. I think there is a degree of organized effort to try to align the food industry with the pharmaceutical industry, with the insurance industry, with the healthcare industry. I smell a rat. I think there is way too much connection and cross pollination for this to have been just circumstantial. I think there's an organized effort that's likely behind it. It's going to take some serious investigations to look into it, but we need the memos and we need the investigation, and they should be subpoenaed, and there should be criminal prosecutions of people who are responsible for the propagation of disease when they know that this is so problematic for human beings.
There's obesity, obviously, is running rampant. And I believe that the obesity is the cause of disease, but what we eat causes obesity and causes disease. And maybe you could talk a little bit about obesity, the GLP-1 drugs, whether or not you think that's the solution we should all be jumping towards.
Yeah. So really fair question, and it's so timely right now with the incredible explosive interest in the GLP med one medication arena. And look, we can't be in denial that people are losing weight, but we can ask the question, well, what, if they're losing weight, their numbers are going down on the bathroom scale. Could we really investigate what they're actually losing? And studies that are emerging, we're actually seeing the loss of muscle mass, going back to what we were talking about earlier, sarcopenia. And in one study, as high as 40%. Well, let me ask the man or woman right now. I will beg you. I will enjoin you. I will exhort you. I will ask as sincerely as I can. Would you please get an MRI to see what's going on in your body? If you care about your body and you care about health, you don't want just to see a number go down. Are you shrinking your muscles that you're going to need to walk and lift up your grandchildren and carry groceries? This is being ignored just for the sake of saying people are losing weight. Well, what are they losing? In one study, it was loss of heart tissue. My God, your heart is an unbelievably critically important organ. Do we want to stand by in the face of demonstrated loss of myocardium and ignore this? No, we have to speak to this. So I challenge everybody that's taken that medicine to quickly get an MRI and watch what's happening on the inside. Just because your figure is shrinking doesn't mean that's a good thing and you should be taking those medicines. Watch how you would shrink and your life would improve if instead of taking medicines, you simply ate good, healthy, nutritious meat.
Is meat a really I think we should patent meat. And let's patent meat, just like they're patenting all these GMOs and they're patenting all these other concepts and ideas. And ultimately, isn't it just so simple? We don't need to spend all the money on all of these testing. Is there a simplified that we can help every human on this earth simply focus on a meat-centric diet, minimize and or eliminate plants, that they can get many of those same improvements that they want to see by instead of taking a drug?
No, I completely agree. You know, the power and the allure, the temptation, the draw of taking a pill is so strong that I am almost on a daily basis wondering if there's some kind of a radical mutation that entered into the human genetic pool that causes people to prefer pills over their lifestyle. Because, Rob, it's so compelling. People will just always seemingly prefer a pill to change in their life. It's remarkable how powerful this predilection and preference that is out there for pills rather than changing your life. And so I'm always wondering, is it genetic? Did a mutation happen that slipped in there that causes people just to hold out their hand for a pill instead of changing their lifestyle and their diet?
It's the plant. The plants slipped in the simple DNA change or the pill poison from a plant, which is making us so, I mean, again, says, oh, I'm hangry, I got to have a piece of meat. No, you're looking for carbohydrate plant material that somehow does something to our brain to keep us in line. And that might be simple. So I say, now you are to me the visceral fat guy, the MRI guy, and the sprint like Sean OMara. And I always say, listen, I recommend fatty meat, generally one meal a day, lift the weights, and sprint like Sean OMara. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you think the lifting weights, the motion, and the sprinting is so important for everyone's health and wellness.
Yeah, I will. That's a great question. Because we have two systems, sympathomimetic and parasympathetic. The more you stay in the parasympathetic, relaxed state, the less disease you have. If you have too much of an abundance of sympathomimetic, the more inflammation and disease you get. And so you want brief, powerful moments of sympathomimetic charge. And that happens, Rob, from a fight or flight scenario. You're either going to open up a can of kick ass, or you're going to get out of Dodge as fast as you can, or get to that fight because you're going to lose a family member, a friend, a child, somebody that's in a threatened situation. And so sprinting and fighting are done quickly and short. And so we noticed when we studied the introduction of sympathomimetic, brief hermetic forms of exercise like sprinting and lifting weights in a condensed, maximally intensive manner, short period of time, that disease fled the body the most. And when you adopt an approach of like more endurance running, longer workouts, that disease abounded more. And so you really want to have fight or flight. We learned about this in medical school. Why we didn't leverage it for the sake of improving our patients, probably go back to our earlier discussions, that that type of application wasn't helpful for our model, which is trying to exploit disease. So I think it's really important to have a practice of maximally intensive exercise, fight or flight, and it goes down to your form of muscle. I mean, you got basically two types of muscle in your body, slow twitch and fast twitch. And the one is completely aligned with your quality of life, and that is the fast twitch, allowing you to pick things up like groceries, to hunt, to pick up your children, to get your butt out of a chair and to be able to walk without a walker. And those are your fast twitch muscles, and not the slow twitch that you get from endurance chronic exercise. So there's this alignment. Lots of runners and distance cyclists, they love plants and vegetables and carbohydrates. And the carnivores, we fight, we hunt, we sprint, we work out, and it aligns better with that lifestyle. So the difference between these plant-eating, carb-loving, processed food consuming vegans compared to the carnivore-centered meat and fat, exercise, lift weights, sprint in a condensed manner is going to become more and more glaringly obvious, and hopefully will attract more people to our camp, and they'll be less able to talk over a period of time because they're just going to look. I don't know how you want to go back and hang in their campfire because they look so bad, and the carnivores are looking so good and living better. So I just think we're early in this thing, Rob. It's going to continue to get better, and we can't give up the fight. We got to remain undaunted, and social media is giving us the opportunity to get this kind of content and this truth out there that otherwise is not going to be shared within conventional healthcare.
Is it important for all of us to get the MRI and get that scan? But I know that many of us like to measure. I want to know where am I starting from so I can see where I'm going.
Okay, so
maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your theories on some of these things.
Yeah, so I think getting an MRI is beneficial, but I wouldn't say it's an imperative. An imperative is changing your lifestyle, but getting an MRI, if you're able to afford it, and they're getting cheaper now, Rob. In Florida, where I am right now, there's a place up in the Orlando area. You can get an MRI cheaper than a DEXA scan, $111. Some
Whoa.
DEXA scans are running $150. So the ability now to get an affordable MRI and seeing inflammatory fat that's accumulating in your muscle and around your heart becomes a more realistic metric for people to follow. And I hope more people become aware of it and start looking at it and tracking it. If you're going to go carnivore, if you're able to get an MRI, see how you change from the inside out. You're certainly going to change from the outside, and it would be beneficial, and repeat it in 3 to 6 months. And if you decide you want to go vegan, and that's what you're doing, get an MRI and see where you are today and see where you are in 6 months, and look at the loss of muscle and look at the accumulation of visceral fat. Vegans end up getting very scrawny looking, but they get this increasing amount of invisible obesity, this visceral fat that's accumulating deep in their abdomen that you can't see in this scrawny person with no muscle, and then fat around their heart. So that's where I think an MRI can be helpful. But our ancestors did perfectly fine keeping away visceral fat from their diet by eating a meat-centric diet without reliance on doing MRIs. But they also paid attention to the tone of muscles. So I'm kind of fun to take my shirt off. I am, 61 years old. I've got good tone, but I only exercise 5 minutes a day for the past 15 years. So, we get these kind of bodies because we're eating correctly, we're living correctly, and, carnivore doctors aren't afraid to pull off our shirts and walk around the beach. So, I almost think I'm going to be the the doctor besides the sprinting doctor, ferment doctor, carnivore doctor, visceral fat doctor, MRI doctor. I think I'm going to be the no shirt doctor to be able to tell people, look, this isn't from, I never took hormones. I never took steroids. I never took gear. Any point in my life, I just lived correctly. And I'm formerly an overweight fat doctor riddled with disease. And then I started living correctly, all naturally. And this is what you should be looking like. You don't have to be overly hypertrophied. You want to have a lean, muscular body that is living well, and it evidences that. So check out carnivore physicians like Dr. Rob Kiltz, Sean Baker, Dr. Sean OMara. We're doing the Dr. Anthony Chafee. We're trying to model this to make this more sensible and understandable for people.
And you don't have to look like us to have the feeling, because in 2 to 4 weeks of carnivore, no matter what your size is, you'll feel so much better.
Absolutely.
Then you'll be motivated to begin to move. Walking is one of the most amazing things you can do. I do my walking for an hour and my OMara sprinting, interspersed in that. And I'll do my light weights, nothing heavy, nothing excessive, and for 5 or 10 minutes. That's it.
Yep. You don't have to exercise a long time. And, I would point, Rob, to what happens in nature. And if you look at the animals, they're not going to Lifetime Fitness and to Planet Fitness and gyms working out for 30 to 45 to 60 minutes. Or, a lot of gym bros are in there for 2 to 3 hours. And that doesn't happen in the wild. It's a very intense, highly, conflict that occurs in the lives of these animals that conditions you. And that's what you have to do. You don't have to go out and get a fist fight in some bar. You just have to do like what Rob Kiltz and Sean OMara does, lift some weights in a maximally intensive manner. I do push-ups and pull-ups to exhaustion till I look like, I'm going to die, and I squeeze more out, and I sprint as fast as I can. You can ease into the sprinting thing. Lots of older people just decide to go out and they're filled with disease and visceral fat and think they go sprinting and they get a hamstring tear. So you want to ease into that. And so for that reason, I tell people maybe, get acclimated on a sprinting in a pool, sprint, swim, something like that. But lifting weights is a really safe way, provided you use good, decent technique to do maximum intensity exercise in a short period of time. So don't think you got to exercise long. I've averaged 5 minutes a day for 15 years, and I'm doing just great, I think.
How about how much you should eat in a day? How frequent you should eat? I mean, they say, you should eat to keep your metabolism going through 6 meals a day. What's your thoughts on that?
All right, so my feelings. We didn't get to talk much about this, but I do a model called feasting and fasting. And I'd love your opinion when we get together. Hopefully you'll go to Wyoming again and meet all out there.
I'll be there. We're gonna
get
great stuff.
So one of the things I think we did is we ate a lot of meat, Rob, in our ancestral existence in a short period of time. Before that meat disappeared or it rotted, became unusable. So I think, the bariatric patients that we take care of, my 600-pound life, where people, I was a medical director for a bariatric program for a while at the VA. And my question was, how many pizzas do you eat a day? How many loaves of bread do you eat a day? How many dozens of donuts do you eat a day? Get your head around, if you're listening to me, these people have an enormous capacity for eating food, carbohydrates.
Right.
Our ancestors had an enormous capacity for eating meat. If you could just simply convert those carbohydrate dependent, enormous bariatric 600-pounders from eating pounds and pounds and gallons of carbohydrates to eating meat, you would solve their pathogenic obesity and reverse them without having to do surgical interventions. So our ancestors, in my opinion, probably consumed on the order of 20 to pounds of meat a day, maybe more, because they had a stomach that would had expansion capacity to eat a lot of meat. And then they would have gone for probably 10 days or maybe longer. We don't know because we don't have recorded history, during that time period where they're hunting these woolly mammoths, but feasting and fasting. So I'm exploring that, brother. I'm looking at stretching my stomach to eat more meat. Those women, they're at hot dog eating contests. They're eating 15 pounds of meat. Modern day little women, 2025. And then, we got these carnivores that are struggling. We get them into it. And they think, my God, I feel satiated at, a pound or a pound and a half of meat. Well, just eat a little bit more. That's what I'm doing. I'm stretching my stomach for good food, not for crappy pizzas, ice cream, donuts, muffins, and bread, but for health optimizing meat.
Well, the only place for your food is actually on your body as fat, because you do not burn sugar. You do not burn what you eat in your stomach directly. It must either go to lymphatics as fat, distribute everywhere, or to the liver as amino acids and sugars to be converted to fat via insulin, or you die. And so ultimately, our drive was to feast in order to put the food where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, I mean, there's no refrigerated cupboard for your next meal.
Exactly right. We are in alignment there. I think you're spot on. And I think the carnivores should be addressing that and talking about it and educating, because it's going to be, I think, our next stage, getting people off plants, the first thing, get them eating meat. But then listen, the momentum is on our side, Rob. Kiltz, we are looking good. We're living better. We can do even better if we study ancestrally what happened. And I think we did feasting. I think we had periods of fasting and feasting that actually optimized us through autophagy, helped us out, and this great resource called meat was available to us, and we would get more in it. And I think we're going to find out that there are even better techniques, insights that we're going to get and develop.